Yo, what is up? Welcome to Ninja Geek Games. Are you looking for a tranquil game? A game set in a lush forest where the soil is rich and the trees are touched by the sun's rays. Have you tried Photosynthesis? A 2 to 4 player game where players attempt to take advantage of the sun's embrace to claim light points that can be spent on planting seeds and growing trees to expand throughout the forest, and ultimately collect life cycle points dependent on the positions of your frondescents. I've used a thesaurus. What's more, this becomes quite a competitive game as the location of your foliage can cast deep shadows into the forest, preventing other players from gaining those precious light points. You are literally throwing shade. That is, until the sun moves across the sky, changing the direction of light and shadows. The game lasts 3 rounds and the player with the most points at the end of the game is the winner. Let's take a look at the components and game mechanics, but first a thank you to Coiled Spring Games for their donation of this game for review, and I'll put a link to their site in the comments.
So this is what the board looks like for a 2-player game, where the board represents the forest and each player has a board filled with trees of 3 different sizes, seeds for planting and a track to score claimed and spent light points. It's a really nice setup and looks great on the table, and gets even better as the game progresses when the forest begins to fill with trees of various size and colours. Each player has their own seed token as well as tree colour that includes a unique shape, which is pretty cool, and the other player sets include these autumnal red-brown and lush green forms. You'll notice the board has these ringlets of slightly different colours that become important when scoring and collecting life cycle points that are represented by these tokens. Lastly, this small board extension is the sun that dictates light direction and where shadows are cast as a result. The game mechanics are elegantly simple, and most of what you need to know is printed on the player boards with regards to actions and cost. So the main focus of the game is for players to gain as many light points as possible to purchase and plant seeds, as well as grow trees that are already in your forest. Naturally, this process is determined by the position of the sun, which is represented by this board. The sun produces rays of light in a straight line across the board, and each player claims a number of light points dependent on the size of their trees in the forest. Each small, medium and large tree produces 1, 2 and 3 light points respectively if they are not hidden by the shadows of other trees. Each tree will cast a shadow of differing length following the direction of light from the sun, and any trees in that shadow will only produce light points if they are taller than the tree casting the shadow. The length of shadow is measured using these spaces, where again small, medium and large trees will produce shadow lengths of 1, 2 and 3 spaces respectively. So this tree would produce 1 light point and this one would produce 3. However, this small and medium sized tree are in the shadow of this larger one, so provide the players no light points. Any light points can be spent to move seeds and trees from your player board to your play area, or from your player area into the forest. All costs are located on your player board, and the game has a nice mechanic for how your trees spread through the forest. Seeds will scatter from one of your own trees in play, and the distance is again dependent on tree size. Yep, you guessed it. Small trees can scatter seeds 1 space. Medium trees a maximum distance of 2 spaces. However, large trees can scatter these seeds up to 3 spaces away. You can grow trees from the tiny seedlings in the forest to the large robust structures, but must go through the tree size order. The last action you can take is ending the life cycle of your largest trees, so don't get too attached. In doing so, you gain a score token matching the colour or leaf number that the tree was vacated from. Here, the life cycle points are generally of higher value the closer to the centre of the board that the tree grew. Now, planting seeds and growing trees may seem simple enough, but the challenge comes with you trying to obtain the most amount of light points so your trees will flourish while casting long shadows over other players. But this may work perfectly in one turn, and in the next you may find yourself in those dark and overbearing shadows. And this is because once all players have claimed and spent light points, the sun will move to a different corner of the forest, emitting light in a different direction. At this stage, light points are recalculated and players again start to spend them in a similar fashion. Once the sun fully loops around the board, the round is over, where the game ends after round 3, and the winner is the player with the most score points collected from ending the life cycles of their trees.
The game components are wonderfully constructed, and at times you'll be nudged by other players to wake you up from your gaze of admiration to remind you it's your turn. In fact, as the game progresses and players are adding and removing trees from the forest, the game board looks incredibly elegant. Although fairly robust structures, the only downside is the initial prep work on punching the tokens and assembling the 56 trees before your first game. Overall, the game is slightly more strategic than I originally thought, which is great as you'll need to determine which actions are best suited for spending your light points. Are you going to plant smaller trees and spread throughout the forest, but risk them being overshadowed, or save up and grow them to ensure light points and hopefully block light to other players? Not only that, the cost of removing trees and seeds from your player board increases with the more you buy, but if well thought out, you can recycle them back to your board when growing larger trees so that they can be bought again later at a lower cost. However, you may find times when there is no room on your player board to recycle them back as there are less spaces than trees and seeds available. In this instance, those components are removed from the game, meaning future purchases may be at a higher cost. Also, when growing trees, you need to do this in size order, so the smallest ones cannot bypass medium-sized trees into the fully mature ones. Instead, you may think that you'll spend light points to grow a young sapling into a medium tree and then spend more points to develop it into a large tree in one turn. But no, you cannot carry out more than one action on the board that involves the same space as a point of reference. I really like the way the seeds are dispersed based on tree size, meaning you can look for better locations with good planning based on which direction light comes from in the next turn. It's quite rewarding to earn and spend lots of light points from a well executed plan, but I have noticed that in a 4-player game there may be times when one player may find themselves a little rooted. By this I mean they have a couple of turns where their positions on the board provide no light points and may struggle to come back from this. However, this is a rarity in games with lower player counts. Speaking of which, I think this plays very well as a 2-player game. You do get to spread out a bit more, and blocking light to the other player makes this a little more aggressive, which I don't mind. The main goal of the game is to earn life cycle points, and this is achieved by removing your largest tree and claiming the score token from the stack matching the colour of the vacated space. These tokens decrease in value where the game boasts more of its thematic nature, as the once rich soil of a ringlet on the board may now be worth less points than those spaces towards the edge of the forest. The game also includes advanced rule variants such as playing an additional round or players being unable to plant seeds or grow trees if they are shadowed by another tree. The latter obviously increases downtime between turns as you have to think a little more carefully about how to carry out your actions, but is a welcome change to spice things up. Overall, I really enjoyed Photosynthesis and think it's the perfect family game. The rules are no more than 4 pages and you've got the concepts after just one read. The movement of the sun is a clever mechanic, changing the focus of each turn played, as well as deciding whether to recycle trees back to your board or continue paying those extra light points. The game required a bit more strategy than I initially thought, as at first I envisioned this being an incredibly light game and so was pleasantly surprised by the outcome. So, thank you for watching. I've enjoyed shedding some light on this game. I nearly got to the end without one. This is Ninja Geek Games. Cheers.